If she regrets the breakup, it's because you mattered. That is not a trivial realization. It's a profound one. People don't regret losing something that was empty, irrelevant, or forgettable. Regret, by its nature, implies a recognition of value. It means that your presence in her life was significant enough that its absence now creates a vacuum, and that vacuum hurts. That's not ego talking. That's reality presenting itself with precision. Pain is not meaningless, it is not random, and it certainly isn't something to be ashamed of. Pain is a signal. It tells you that something had weight. If she feels pain, if she feels regret, that's her psyche acknowledging that your presence disrupted the triviality of her existence. Maybe it challenged her. Maybe it supported her. Maybe it held her accountable in ways she didn't appreciate at the time. But the pain is the evidence that your presence was real, solid, not superficial. Most people drift through relationships with one foot already out the door. They dabble in connection. They mimic love. But when someone enters their life with authenticity, with integrity, with a sense of identity, they leave an imprint. And that imprint is what she's now feeling. Not just the absence of a body or the silence in a room, but the loss of someone whose presence meant something. That's not easily replaced. That's not swiped away or numbed out with distraction. It's tempting to see her regret as a kind of vindication. And maybe, in part, it is. It validates what you already knew, that your intentions were genuine, your time was sacred, and your heart was not disposable. But don't let that be the full stop. Her regret is a marker, not a milestone. It's not where your story ends. It's where the meaning of that pain begins to be understood. And that understanding should change you. What this moment proves, this moment where she begins to look back with regret, is that you are not insignificant. And you must let that realization guide your next step. Too often we collapse under the illusion that being left equates to being unworthy. But regret flips that on its head. If she were happier without you, if your absence was a relief, then regret wouldn't exist. The very fact that she's hurting, that she's questioning her decision, means your value is asserting itself even in silence. You can't fake that. You can't manufacture it. It comes only from having been real, and real is rare. However, don't misinterpret this. Don't allow her regret to dictate your path. It's not an invitation to rewind the clock. It's not an excuse to seek closure or revisit broken ground. Instead, it's a moment to stand up straight, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and recognize that you were enough, not because she now sees it, but because you always were. Her delayed understanding doesn't retroactively validate you. It simply illuminates what was already there. And now the responsibility falls on you, not to respond to her regret, but to respond to what that regret means about you, that you are capable of leaving a mark, that you are the kind of person whose presence can change the emotional landscape of another human being. That is not a weakness. That is not something to bury or be ashamed of. That is power, quiet, humble, deeply rooted power. So what do you do with it? You let it shape you. You let it remind you that your vulnerability, your sincerity, your devotion, those are not liabilities. They're your proof of depth. And people who have depth, real depth, will often be misunderstood or undervalued until they're gone. That's the cost of being genuine in a world drowning in the shallow. But that cost is not a punishment. It's a filter. It separates those who see your worth from those who were never capable of it. And if someone finally starts to see it after they've walked away, that's not your burden. That's their reckoning. So feel no need to prove your value retroactively. Her regret is already doing that. Let her live with the memory of what she walked away from, and let you live in the awareness that pain, when it follows your absence, is proof that you were real, that you mattered, that you meant something. That's not arrogance, that's clarity. Don't waste her regret. That feeling, that shift in her perception is not the end point, it's a beginning. It's the sound of reality finally catching up to the choices she made, and for you, it's a signal. Not to chase her, not to gloat, not to circle back, but to rise. This is your call to action. The moment someone begins to regret losing you is the moment you must ensure they can never find you in the same place again. That version of you, heartbroken, waiting, uncertain, is done. If there was ever a time to take control of your life, this is it. Because if you don't, that moment will pass, and all the emotional potential it carries will turn into bitterness and waste. You don't get many chances in life where your emotional pain lines up perfectly with an opportunity to transform. This is one of those moments. You feel hurt. You feel lost, but you also feel seen. For the first time, maybe in a long time, you know you had an impact, that someone now sees you more clearly than they did when they were with you. And what you do next matters more than anything. Most people wait. They stall in that space, fantasizing about reconciliation, hoping for a text, clinging to the idea that maybe this regret means she's coming back. But that's the trap. That's how you lose the window. You can't afford to be idle. When you feel the weight of loss, hers and your own, you have to channel it. Discipline is no longer optional. It becomes essential. Because if you stay where you are emotionally, you stagnate. And worse, you make your identity out of being the one who was left behind. That's a dangerous position to live in. You're not a statue in someone else's memory. You're not a placeholder for potential closure. You're a human being, and now is the time to become something formidable. This isn't about pretending you don't care. That's dishonest. It's about letting that care fuel you in the right direction. People underestimate what focused energy can do when it's born from heartbreak. When you're in pain, every part of you is raw, and if you don't harness that intensity, it will break you. But if you do, if you commit to structure, to discipline, to reshaping your mind and body, you become a weapon. Not in a violent sense, but in the sense that you are now precise, grounded, dangerous in the best possible way. Start with your habits. Fix your environment. Clean your space, because a chaotic room reflects a chaotic mind. Wake up earlier. Train your body, because strength isn't just physical, it's psychological. Eat better. Read. Learn. Get serious about your career, your goals, your mission. This isn't motivational fluff. This is how you reclaim territory in your own life. When someone regrets losing you, don't let them find the same version they walked away from. Let them find a ghost. Let them realize they no longer have access to who you used to be. Not out of malice, but because you outgrew the narrative. This process isn't quick, it's not easy. But it's real. Every step you take toward bettering yourself is a step away from needing their validation. You stop building your identity on the idea that they might return and start building it on who you can become regardless. That's when the power shifts. That's when you realize the regret they feel is just a ripple in a much larger transformation, yours. You see, order is everything. Without it, your emotions run you into the ground. With it, they fuel your ascent. So stop waiting for closure. Stop fantasizing about apologies. Instead, build something that renders them irrelevant. Don't aim to prove them wrong. Aim to become undeniable. Not to her, but to yourself. Because the truth is, she might never come back. Or she might try, but only after she sees what you've become. And by then, the most important decision won't be hers, it'll be yours. You'll be in a place where you no longer need her to regret it because you no longer need her at all. So take this moment, the moment she starts to feel the weight of what she gave up, and don't let it go to waste. Don't sit still, don't delay, begin now, not tomorrow, now. Order yourself, master your routines, fortify your mind. This is not about revenge, this is about resurrection. This is the moment you either stay broken or rebuild with precision. This is the moment that separates who you were from who you're meant to be. And if you get it right, you won't just move on, you'll move beyond. Regret isn't an apology, and you don't wait for either. That truth is hard to swallow when you're still emotionally tied to someone. When someone you cared about begins to regret leaving, it can feel like the beginning of something hopeful. It's tempting to interpret that regret as a doorway back to what was. You might imagine a message coming through, an apology being offered, a moment of clarity where they finally see what they lost. And maybe they do see it, but that doesn't mean they'll admit it. And even if they do, it doesn't mean they'll return, or that things would ever be right again. Regret is just a feeling. It's not a commitment. It's not responsibility. It's not love rekindled. It's just emotion mixed with hindsight. You can't build your future on that. There's a quiet danger in waiting for someone to apologize. It puts your healing on pause. You start to live in a state of emotional suspension where every step forward is delayed by the hope that someone will come back and make it all make sense. But they might not. People often regret deeply without ever speaking it aloud. Their pride, their fear, or their distraction keeps them from reaching out, and you're left holding your breath, waiting for closure that may never come. That's not just painful. It's disempowering, because the longer you wait for someone else to take responsibility for your pain, the more control you give them over your life. You don't need their apology to validate your experience. What you went through was real. What you gave was sincere. The hurt you felt wasn't imaginary. And just because they can't or won't articulate their regret doesn't mean they don't feel it. But more importantly, it doesn't mean that you should stand still, waiting for a moment of justice or recognition. Life doesn't owe you symmetry. Closure doesn't always arrive in the form of a conversation. Sometimes closure is the quiet decision to stop giving your past power over your present. You have to move forward not because they apologized, but because you deserve to live fully. The weight of what they did or failed to do is not yours to carry forever. It happened. It hurt. It changed you. But it does not get to define you. The longer you wait for someone to say they're sorry, the more your story becomes about them. That's the tragedy. People who don't know how to handle you, who don't have the strength to love you properly, can still leave a long-lasting impact, not because they were right, but because you gave their silence too much meaning. And that's where you reclaim yourself. You stop waiting, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You realize that regret, as powerful as it may seem, is not a transaction. It doesn't return what was lost. It doesn't undo the nights you cried or the days you doubted yourself. It doesn't repair the trust that was broken or the dreams that were interrupted. And even if the apology comes, it might not bring peace. Because sometimes hearing "I'm sometimes sorry" doesn't heal you, it just reminds you of how long you waited to hear it. So instead of looking backward, you look inward. You ask yourself who you want to become in the aftermath of their absence. You let their regret remain theirs, and you take ownership of your future. You stop crafting imaginary conversations, stop replaying old memories with different endings, and start acting like your healing is your responsibility, because it is. That's not to say they weren't wrong, or that their regret doesn't matter. It might, but it can't matter more than your growth. You're not here to be an emotional checkpoint for someone else's learning curve. You're not a lesson they get to revisit once they've figured things out. You're not the backup plan or the comfortable memory they might want to return to when life gets hard. You are a person with dignity, with value, with a path forward that doesn't rely on them finally getting it right. And maybe one day they will come back. Maybe they'll say all the things you once prayed to hear, but by then, if you've done the work, you won't need it. You'll be standing in a new space, built by your own hands, powered by your decision to move without waiting. You'll realize that the apology, as nice as it might be, could never give you more than you've already given yourself. So let them regret, let them feel whatever they feel, but don't let it be the reason you stand still. You don't need to hear "I'm sorry" to forgive. You don't need an invitation to move on. The future isn't something you wait for. It's something you build. And you start building it the moment you stop waiting for someone else to fix what they broke. Your responsibility is to outgrow her memory. That might sound harsh at first, especially when you're still attached to what you had, still revisiting old conversations in your mind, still feeling the pull of something that once felt like it would last forever. But this isn't about denying the past. It's about refusing to live in it. If she starts to regret the breakup, if she begins to realize what she lost, that's her internal process to carry. Yours is different. Yours is to make sure that if she ever looks back, she sees someone she can no longer reach. Not because you disappeared out of bitterness, but because you evolved past the version of yourself that needed her. There's a truth that many people avoid after heartbreak. If you don't grow, you'll remain emotionally tethered to someone who left. That tether doesn't always come from hope. Sometimes it comes from stagnation. You sit in the same habits, the same thoughts, the same self-perception that existed when the relationship ended, and then you wonder why you still feel stuck. It's because you haven't become someone new yet. You haven't built the distance, not just in time or space, but in identity. Real growth makes it impossible for her to relate to you the same way she once did. And that's the goal. Not revenge, not superiority, just evolution. Think about it. When you stay the same after a breakup, you remain accessible, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. You're still that same person who was left. You're still shaped by the same fears, still defined by the same patterns. That makes it easy for her to reach back in her mind and recall exactly who you were, what you felt, and how you operated. But if you grow, truly grow, that memory becomes less accurate, less complete. Eventually, it becomes obsolete. And that's not cruelty. That's what transformation does. It outpaces the past. The weight of someone's regret should never hold you in place. You don't exist to give them the comfort of knowing you stayed the same. If she ever looks back, let it be a moment of realization. Not that she could come back and resume things, but that she couldn't catch up to you now, even if she tried. You're not in the same place emotionally. You're not reacting the same way. You're not chasing validation. You're building something, your life, your vision, your future, and that construction is sacred. It deserves your full attention. There's a kind of quiet power in becoming someone who no longer fits the story she remembers. You rewrite yourself. You add depth, strength, clarity. You develop new disciplines, expand your worldview, confront your flaws. You make peace with your past, not by erasing it, but by outgrowing its influence. And when that happens, her memory of you becomes a snapshot, not a reflection of who you are now, but a record of who you once were. That's not loss, that's growth. The process isn't glamorous, it's not easy. Some days you'll want to go back. You'll romanticize the connection, the intimacy, the shared moments. But you have to remind yourself, you're not meant to live in someone else's nostalgia. You're meant to move forward with purpose. Her regret, as real as it might be, cannot be your reason for remaining who you were. That person is already gone, or should be. You are responsible for your growth. No one else can do that for you. Not time, not closure, not even regret from the other side. You have to make the decision every day to become someone that her memory cannot fully contain. That means stretching beyond your comfort zone. It means leaving behind old thought patterns, bad habits, and broken self-beliefs. It means stepping into a version of yourself that is independent, not in defiance of her, but in fulfillment of you. Eventually, you'll look back and realize the most powerful thing you did was not waiting, not hoping, not needing her to see your worth, but becoming someone who doesn't need to be seen by her at all. You'll stand taller, think clearer, love yourself more deeply. And if she looks at you with regret, it won't shake you. It won't tempt you. It will simply be evidence of how far you've come. So take responsibility for outgrowing her memory. Don't just move on, move up. Become someone who can look back at the pain and say, that was part of me, but it no longer defines me. The person you are becoming is far more important than the person she remembers. Let your future be your answer. Let your growth be the end of the story. You don't chase someone who walked away. You become someone they can't walk back to. That single idea contains more wisdom than most people want to admit because it goes against one of the strongest human instincts, the need for closure, the desire to be chosen, the longing to be seen by the one who turned their back on you. But the truth is, if someone had the clarity to walk away from you in a moment when you were willing to give your time, your attention, your loyalty, then your mission after that is not to earn them back. It's to become someone who no longer exists in that same emotional space where they left you. It's not about anger. It's not about resentment. It's about dignity. There is a line you draw, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. That line says, if you left when I was still loving you, then the version of me you knew is no longer available. That version gets to rest. It no longer works to prove itself, no longer exists to validate your uncertainty. That version is over. Not because it was weak, but because it had the strength to let go of someone who didn't choose to stay. People often confuse stillness with strength. They think waiting is noble. They imagine that patience will bring things full circle. But waiting for someone to realize your worth is not strength, it's surrender. It's giving away your momentum. And momentum is everything. You need it, especially after loss. You need motion, direction, discipline. Because if you don't create movement, you'll live in a loop, replaying the moments when they left, rehearsing what you could have said differently, holding out for the fantasy where they come back changed. But they might not change. And even if they do, it won't undo the choice they made when you were still all in. So you don't chase them. Not emotionally, not physically, not digitally. You don't keep the door cracked. You don't monitor their life from afar, hoping for a sign. Because chasing in any form is rooted in fear. It's driven by the belief that your value is still up for debate. But it isn't. If you've done the work, if you showed up with honesty, gave what you had, and stayed true to your intentions, then your value is already established. Whether or not they recognized it is their lesson to carry, not yours. You become someone they can't walk back to by making forward motion non-negotiable. That means improving every area of your life, not to impress them, but to honor what you survived. If your heart broke, let your habits build. If your identity shook, let your purpose steady you. Learn new skills. Challenge your body, confront your weaknesses. Build relationships with people who see your worth clearly, who don't need to lose you to appreciate you. Because when you build from the inside out, you stop being the version of yourself that waited. You become the version that commands respect simply by existing. This is not about revenge. It's not about making them feel bad. That's shallow. That's noise. What matters is that you become unavailable to the kind of dynamic that allowed you to be left in the first place. Become someone with higher standards, with clearer boundaries, with a stronger identity. You become emotionally fluent, no longer controlled by longing, no longer reacting to the echoes of what used to be. That doesn't mean you forget them. It means you outgrow the emotional reliance on their recognition. If they ever try to return, let them see a version of you they never met. Not because you're faking it, but because your pain demanded a new level of growth. Let them meet a version of you who is no longer waiting, no longer uncertain, no longer bound by the memory of who you were together. And in that moment, you won't have to prove anything. Your presence, your energy, your clarity will speak volumes. You'll know that they are not meeting the person they left behind. They're seeing someone who transformed the loss into evolution. So no, you don't chase. You ascend, you sharpen, you rise, you keep walking, even if your legs shake, even if your heart remembers. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means becoming someone stronger than the moment that broke you. Someone whose future is far too valuable to wait for someone who walked away. Healing isn't loud. It's not always visible to the world. There are no cheering crowds, no dramatic breakthroughs, no applause. Healing is a quiet, consistent choice. It's choosing to stand up every morning when it would be easier to lie down. It's deciding to clean your space, even when your heart is still heavy. It's sitting in silence and facing yourself instead of numbing the pain with distractions. Healing is not about showing the world how strong you are. It's about proving to yourself in the smallest of ways that you are not staying broken. This is what makes healing powerful. It's not flashy. It doesn't ask for attention. It just demands honesty. And honesty, especially with yourself, is uncomfortable. It forces you to admit the truth that someone you cared for left and they might never come back. That the future you once envisioned now has to be reimagined without them in it. That the love you gave, even if it was real, wasn't enough to make them stay. And despite all of that, healing asks you to keep moving. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because it does. The process isn't linear. You will have days where you feel like you've moved on, and then something small, an old song, a memory, a random moment, will hit you like a wave. That's not failure. That's the process. Healing doesn't erase your past. It teaches you how to carry it differently. You're allowed to miss them. You're allowed to remember. But you're not allowed to let those memories define you. That's where discipline comes in. Discipline doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't let your feelings dictate your future. Some days healing will look like progress, going to the gym, reading a book, starting a new routine. Other days it will look like survival, making it through the day without falling apart. Both are victories. Both matter. Because healing is not a performance. It's a reconstruction. You are rebuilding yourself from the ground up, not to be who you were before the relationship, but to be someone wiser, stronger, more grounded than you've ever been. In this process, you will start to see that your worth was never dependent on whether someone stayed or left. It was never tied to their ability to appreciate you. Their decision to walk away says something about them. It does not define you. And the more you focus on your own path, the clearer that becomes. You start to feel proud of how far you've come, even if no one else sees it. You stop measuring your progress by how much they miss you, and start measuring it by how at peace you feel when you're alone. Healing also means letting go of the illusion that one day they'll return and everything will make sense. They might regret leaving. They might even try to come back. But by the time that happens, if it happens, you'll be different. You won't need their validation anymore. You won't crave their attention. You won't be waiting for them to fix what they broke because you will have already done the work yourself. That's what healing gives you. It gives you independence from their choices. It frees you from their timeline. Eventually, you'll notice something has shifted. You'll laugh and mean it. You'll wake up without that weight on your chest. You'll stop rehearsing old conversations and start planning new goals. You'll stop looking back and start building forward. And in those moments, you'll realize that healing was never about erasing the pain. It was about learning how to carry it with grace, how to let it refine you instead of destroy you. You don't rush this process. You don't force it. You respect it. Because healing is sacred. It's the quiet revolution of reclaiming your identity. And the more you commit to it, the less control your past has over you. You become calm, not because everything is perfect, but because you've made peace with what you can't control. You become steady, not because you never feel pain again, but because you no longer collapse under its weight. So stay in the process. Trust it. Let it work on you from the inside out. Because one day, without even realizing it, you'll look in the mirror and see someone whole, not someone who is fixed, but someone who is forged. And in that moment, you'll know you didn't just survive. You healed. Quietly, steadily, powerfully. And that is something no one can take from you.